Welcome everybody to another episode of this YouTube series where I critically evaluate the user interface of some of the games I play. You might be familiar with the term quality of life in the gaming world, whereas usability is the academic term that refers to how well users, or in this case players, can perform or complete a task using a system, which in this case is the game we are playing. For those watching for the first time, I am a university professor of human-computer interaction whose research focus is in virtual reality. But I have always been a gamer, so when I'm playing I cannot avoid looking at how user interfaces are designed, what works and what could have been improved. So today we are looking at Terra Invicta, a grand strategy game developed by Pavonis Interactive. It's an indie game which puts you in the shoes of a grey eminence, managing one among many factions trying to resist an alien invasion. It's actually multiple games into one. There is an Earth-based component, there's a space mining aspect, as well as a space battle simulator or Star Wars simulator, which is like a realistic version of Homeworld, if you remember it. And I really heartily recommend this game to any science fiction fans. In the game, you choose one among many factions, and each has its own goal in relation to the alien invasions. Terra Invicta is a prime example of why usability is important in computer games. Being a strategy game, the user interface plays a major role, and in this video I will be going through the various aspects of the game UI, and I'll start with what is probably the first thing players see, which is the map interface. So you have various actions, like for example control nations, which is what enables you to gain an open control point, like the text says, into a country that is yet to be controlled by any other faction. For example, this one has an empty slot here, and so it can be controlled, whereas, for example, the United States has its control points already taken by some of the other factions. You also have many other missions that you can do. For example, you can capture other enemy councilors, you can investigate alien activities, you can sabotage enemy technological projects, and so on. Each of these missions is controlled, or let's say the success of the missions is controlled by the attributes. So each operative is like an RPG character with various attributes. You see, you have persuasion, investigation, espionage, and the others here. And here it says which kind of missions they can perform and what kind of attribute it helps to have a higher chance of being successful at the missions. However, what could confuse player is that here in this toolbar there's no clear indication of which missions this agent will be best suited to perform. So you kind of have to do this kind of reasoning by yourself. So you have the attributes here, and you have to remember, for example, that investigation is a good attribute to have when performing investigate counselor missions. You can see here it says investigation 10, which factors in the calculation of how successful you will be. But there are other missions, for example, like Crackdown, which is also controlled by investigation, so this card has a much higher value for investigation. But you see, they all have the same kind of color, so they do have different icons, but at a glance I can't understand which missions this character is best suited to. So after playing for a while, you will learn which among your characters is best suited for a certain mission, but maybe let's say that you haven't been playing for a bit and you kind of forgot what are the strong points of each character. So what could be helpful here is to have some kind of color coding. So for example, you could use let's say the colors that are associated to the attributes. For example, persuasion could be associated to the color orange, investigation blue, espionage gray, or command green or yellow, and so on. And to have this kind of coloring reflected both here as well as in the background, for example, of the icons here. Another improvement to streamline the interface will be to group all similar missions together. For example, you have investigation missions such as Investigate Counselor, Crackdown. Why are they so far apart? If they were closer together, I think that would be helpful for the players, as well as maybe the ability of expanding or collapsing missions that are not frequently used for specific characters. Second aspect I would like to look at is the map view. So if you have played games like Hearts of Iron, Crusader Kings, you will be pretty familiar with how it is organized. So you have various regions here, and each of them contributes to the overall output of a country, which is determined by various priority areas, like here. You see every one of these has a pretty lengthy explanation with what kind of effect does it have, depending on how many points you spend for each priority, what happens when this bar fills, what kind of effect they have. As you can see, there's a lot of text here, and I feel that this game has a bit of a layout problem, or the way it presents information. A good solution might come from the game Crusader Kings 3. This one has a very interesting interactive tooltip system, so whenever you're interested into learning more about a game concept, you can hover over an icon, for example, and in the tooltip that it displays, through the highlighted keywords, you can continue to open other tooltips so that you can learn more about how the game works without leaving the current interface that you are in. And the same cannot be said about Terra Invicta. For example, let's say that I'm hovering here. You see that the nation's inequality score has changed by plus 0.0058 in the last 30 days. And maybe I want to know what is the inequality, what's the concept of inequality. After having played Crusader Kings, I'm naturally driven, to enter into the tooltip, which, as you can see, disappears. So I think here the developers should take a page from Crusader Kings and try to replicate some similar functionality. That would help a lot. So this is surely something that can be improved. There are other minor issues. For example, you can see here you can apply a template. There are several templates that the game already provides for you, which have different allocations of points into these various characteristics. One thing that could be improved is to allow you to update priority templates. For example, this is one that I have created, so if I were to change it, I can no longer update it, so I have to create a new one, delete the previous one, and reapply it everywhere. So surely some basic functionality that allows me to update previously created templates would be very beneficial. Following up on the layout problem, this is also reflected in other parts of the interface. For example, in the character view here, you have this area of the game called Organization and Marketplace, where you can buy and assign to each character some of these organizations. Some of these are randomly generated, some are real organization like the NSA that you see here, and so they have different requirements, different effects when applied to the game. One that I feel is very confusing is that the layout of the interface changes when, for example, you click on one. You can see it immediately pops up this secondary panel here, and the organization that I had clicked on shifts its position. So now it's here, I click and it goes there, and it doesn't look like I have selected it. So I might be confused, like what happened, where does this panel come from? So this could be improved in various ways. You could either have a permanent panel here, or at least add some kind of animation that shows me, okay, this is happening, and so I'm better able to follow what's going on. The same problems with layouting are also present in other areas of the game. So at some point you get a chance to build various outposts, like on the moon or on Mars. You can also build space stations and manage what kind of buildings get built on each of these outposts. So what I feel is a bit problematic is the fact that the layout changes from when you click on a station to what it was before. You see we have a much larger column here. We click manage and it brings us into a different view without an animation. So I feel that the developers should maybe improve this aspect a bit by adding some kind of animation. For example, the column should animate the fact that it's shrinking. and this should animate the width so that it expands. Another problem that I found is with the hubs and outpost view is the representation of the information. So here the UI is divided in 3 columns, the biggest of which is for graphical representations of the building in the outpost in this case. And then we have 2 more columns, one on the left and one on the right. So whenever I want to have some details on the buildings that are available to build, I will click here, and as you noticed there is a sound effect to alert me that something appeared on the left screen. However, having a large screen, in my case it's 27 inches, I will be focusing my gaze here, so I will not be immediately aware of what happened on the other side of the screen. So the game requires me to move my head from the right side to the left side to see what happened here, whereas it would have been easier for the user to see everything close by. Also, the content should be standardized. If I click on Vision File here, on the left column it displays some information. If I now click on an already built Vision File, you might have noticed that the dimensions of this panel have slightly changed. So this one is a little bit taller than the one that appears when I click here. So in order to give the impression of a polished game, these kind of inconsistencies should be addressed and standardized. Now the difference is, I think, that here there's a construction cost panel, whereas on the already built Vision File this is obviously lacking. So another problematic area of the game is the research UI. In Terra Invicta, research is divided into 2 categories. You have both theoretical research projects as well as applied engineering projects. When you research a new theoretical technology, if you contributed the most research points, you get a chance to pick a new one. The problem is that the game does not give you any insight into how to make an informed choice, at least with the information contained in this window. For example, will the Amplitude drive be better than the mass driver? There are no interactive tooltips like I mentioned, so I can't know the answers unless I played the game before. The game also features an impressive tech tree, and there are some minor usability adjustments that could be made here. For example, I initially thought that the mouse wheel would be mapped to the zoom, whereas the zoom has its own slider here, and the mouse wheel is mapped to scrolling up and down, which is what you can already do with the left mouse button. So in order to behave like other games, perhaps the mouse wheel could be mapped to the zoom instead. Some improvements that could be made is, for example, from research on information visualization, one of the mantras there is overview first, then details on demand. So this could mean like a mini-map that enables you to make large movements across the map, and also the possibility not to overwhelm the player by displaying so much information all at once, because indeed this is not even the full tree. There's yet another technology tree that shows all the engineering projects, and so here I think it would be necessary, for example, to show the previous branches of the tree and the future branches of the tree as collapsed, so that the user or the player can decide whether to expand them or not. So the ship class design is also another very important part of the game, and one that I have struggled the most with. You really need to have an understanding of physics, of what delta V is, of what the thrust value for each engine represents. And it's not like in Stellaris, for example, where you have an engine 1 and then an engine 2, and it's very clear that engine 2 is better than engine 1. Here you must reach that decision yourself, and I have to say that the game provides you only the information it knows about, like the aforementioned values, but not a way to interpret them without using resources found outside of the game. For example, let's put ourselves into the shoes of a new player. I see an engine here with 15 million newtons and another one with 12,000 newtons, the Amplitude drive. So does this mean that the Apex solid rocket is 1,000 times better than the Amplitude drive? Well, I think the answer is that Terra Invicta, in wanting to be very realistic, it included all plausible ideas for near-future ship engines, even those that might not be really suited for an interplanetary warship, but more for things like a satellite. But if you are not very knowledgeable or experienced with physics or with the designer itself, you might be wondering, okay, but how can I know what is best suited for the ship design that I want to build? So indeed, you might find the answer by trial and error, or noticing how the values change when you swap engines. So you see I have now put the input on drive, and the acceleration is only 10 millig's, which is lower compared to the acceleration given to me by the other engines. But if these numbers don't tell you anything, you might have problems into finding good designs for your ships unless you go outside of the game and find some guides on designing engines. But again, I want to reiterate, it should be the game that provides these answers to you. So how could this be improved? Well, I want to suggest a solution I'm using in my own game that I am working on, which is a space exploration game where you play the role of an AI who must find a habitable planet by sending probes at sublight speeds. Since there is both a solar system part and a galactic part, in my ship designer, let's say, the game tells you whether your design is rated for interplanetary missions or interstellar ones. Likewise, here the game could give you ratings for various aspects of your ships compared to the phase of the game that you're in. For example, could provide you with ratings for the acceleration, for the range, for the damage, or for the armor that you have. Because as a new player, you may ask yourself questions like, is a value of 3 or 4 good or not? Is a damage of 4.4 good or not? And the game doesn't really give you these answers, so you must find it yourself through trial and error, or by looking at how the AI designs its ships, or looking at guides. Next, I would like to talk about the battle simulator, and since in the game I'm playing I haven't got very far yet, I will use the skirmish simulator, which can also be used to test your designs against the AI to see how well they would fare. When the battle begins, this is the UI that you are presented with. So you see all the different velocity vectors for each of your ships, and some actions that your ship might perform, like retracting radiators and so on. But the most important, or perhaps the most confusing thing are how you actually make your ship move. So again, we are in space, we are using Newtonian physics, so your ship will actually continue traveling along their path or their trajectory unless something changes. And in order to make your ship go a different way, you have to use this kind of maneuver nodes. So if you're familiar with Kerbal, you will know how to use them. But we are in three-dimensional space, and you can not just move on the XZ plane if Y is up, but you also have other commands or other keys that you can press to, for example, constrain movement to only a specific plane. Like in this case, the ship will go up. In general, and here I'm speaking from experience of working on 3D interaction, people struggle with reasoning in three-dimensional space, especially if we are doing our three-dimensional maneuvers into a screen that is only two-dimensional. So I want to ask, for example, how many of you will be able to perform complicated maneuver in three-dimensional space with only these kind of maneuver nodes. And also remember that there will be several battles that you will have to play, and depending on the number of ships that you're working with, I think it's unrealistic for just one person to control every other ship. Yes, of course you can use the AI, you can delegate control to the AI, but then I don't think that is very interesting, because then it becomes just something that you watch and you don't really play. So another approach, which maybe would require a heavier redesign, would be to, instead of putting you in the shoes of every pilot simultaneously in the fleet, the game could put you in the shoes of the admiral of the fleet. So you will give orders that your ship will delegate it then to their simulated crew. If you remember games like X-Wing or Wing Commander, there you will be the pilot flying the ship, and you will receive mission objectives from your admiral, and you will try to fulfill them. So likewise, you could be able to tell, for example, a specific ship to try to intercept the enemy and another to flank them, and these ships will try to execute your orders as best as they can. At the end of the day, we must think whether we want players to just let the AI fight battles for them, or just auto-resolve them, because I don't think that is a sign of a good design. Or maybe it's just because I am not really that good at playing this game. But The goal, I think, should be to let players feel that their actions have impact on the battle they are fighting, and I don't think the good approach is to have the player be every pilot simultaneously at once. So this concludes my analysis of the usability of Terra Invicta. Despite some flaws, this is one of those games that it's really hard to put down, and I cannot give up and let the aliens win. Earth must come first. Did you encounter any of those issues, and what other areas of the game you think need improvement? Let me know in the comments, and also if you have suggestions for other games you would like me to critically evaluate. Until next time, and like they say in XCOM, vigilo confido, always be vigilant.